Welcome to episode 4 in April, where we nourish our habit to rebirth the earth. April's habit is to take care of our environment. April's color is spring green. April's personal goal to select an environmental project, even as simple as planting as a tree in your own yard and putting yourself in the picture. We'll talk more about that. Well, if we lose the earth, as the Swami says, there goes our GDP. Isn't it funny, or seriously tragic, that we're so focused on artificial intelligence, and yet we're so out of touch with real intelligence, the real intelligence of nature? This is the month to love nature, to love the natural world, to be present in it. Bring it into your life. Grow your own food, or visit a local farm where your food is being grown. Invest in community-supported agriculture. Ask yourself, what can I habitually do to remember and practice the love of nature? Hi, I'm Steve Bhaerman, and welcome to April, the 4th month of the year, where we focus on rebirthing the earth with our own acts to take care of our environment and helping the earth take care of us as well. We already have Earth Day on April 21st, but who can build an earth stewardship on just one day a year? It takes a whole month to form a habit. So on the 12 Habits path, let's devote the whole month of April to earth stewardship. Now, if you viewed some of our other monthly episodes, you've probably noticed that each month has its own unique color. Many of the peer participants on the 12 Habits path over the years have tried to wear clothing in the color of the month to help remind them of the unified monthly consciousness we're all working on together. So April, the color is spring green. Now, as you learned in our introductory episode to the 12 Habits as the path to unity, this path is a new way to actually put our desire for cosmic one consciousness and intentional evolution and unity into real practices. We grow spiritually, while at the same time, we put these habits into practice in daily life. We have a chance to achieve what Bruce Lipton calls heaven on earth, which is why he endorses the 12 Habits path, because every time we practice these 12 habits, we are bringing heaven to earth rather than waiting for it to come from somewhere else. These 12 habits are the best way that I have found to be able to put evolution into practice, because we're all doing it together, 1 month at a time. Every month is really an intentional community of people practicing that practice in a coherent way. And so now I'd like to introduce my cohort in this webinar, the creator of the 12 Habits Path to Intentional Evolution, Elaine Parke. Welcome, Elaine, and why don't you tell us a little bit about the colors and how they were chosen and why?
Well, thank you for that question, Steve. It only took you 4 months to ask it. All of our viewers have been probably seeing the color of the month. Well, they've noticed that our backgrounds have changed every month when we do a new episode, and they've seen a color written in the bottom of our backgrounds, but it has taken until now. We thought maybe we'd raise a little curiosity, but each month has its own color, because that is, in fact, advertisers use colors. You know, we think of certain brands and things, and you think of the colors that go with the brand. Certainly sports teams, use colors. So that colors really become another form of a reminder. There have been schools that have done that 12 habits for maybe 2 or 3 years, where the teachers just put banners up in the hallways that were simply pieces of paper that were blank with the colors on them. And after a while, many of the kids were able to remember the colors, remember the habit. They could walk down the hallway and point to the color and actually tell you what the habit was, just because they were seeing the appropriate color. When we first started this in Somerset in the early 90s, we didn't have a color of the month. The idea of doing a color of the month sort of came in afterwards. So when we decided we were going to do that, we consulted color consultants who were very aware of the vibrational aspects of what colors do to us. For instance, spring green I mean, it's a very nature-y, you have a sense of nature. Many people know that lavender, the scent of lavender, the color lavender are very calming, which is why maybe someone skipped ahead to episode 10, which is October, but be patient and listen, which is October's habit. That color is slow down lavender, one of my favorites. So we've tried to use the resonating of the colors and the feeling and the spiritual aspects of the colors. My necklace has all the colors in it, and I just love it. I wear it every time we speak. So that they are part of the reminder system, and also wearing the colors. I try to wear at least an accessory or something of the colors, most days that I go out of the house, because I know that it helps remind me. People might ask me why I'm wearing that color. It gives me an opportunity to talk about the habit, and it's just a way of my spreading the habit. Actually, my closet looks a little like a thrift store because I've got all my clothes arranged by the colors. So I'm now probably talking to the women in our audience a little more to the end than the men. But honestly, ladies, it's a really nice way to get through your wardrobe, because you wear spring green in April, you wear a form of white in March, you wear a bright color. February is the middle of winter, so it's you count, but it's also a nice time to wear a bright flash of color. Gentle aqua in January is very, very gentle. It's indicative of helping others, and so it's it's a nice way. So every month when I get to my closet and I start wearing the colors for the new month, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot how much I liked that skirt, or how much I liked, whatever item of clothing, because it's probably been a year since I put that item of clothing on. So, ladies, use this as a way to enjoy your wardrobe better, because as you go through your wardrobe, you're really going to enjoy it. And the color coding does make a very conscious effort to capture the spirit of what the monthly habit is. The other outcome of having done that is that the colors do form a rainbow. And as we all know, a rainbow connects the sky to the earth, connects the spiritual to the practical. The earth is the practical, the Mother Earth, the sky being the spiritual. And a rainbow is what connects them all together. I think in an earlier episode, Steve, you were talking about how, a prism turns white light into color, and if just one piece of it is missing, then you don't get the rainbow. So it's just a wonderful aspect of the 12 habits, and another way to make it a whole lot of fun because it's color. Sometimes when I'm going into a school, one time a teacher would run up to me and she stuck her hand out at me and go, "Look, I've colored my fingernails," whatever the color of the month is. So there's just so many ways to have fun, and the color is absolutely a way to add a whole lot more fun to practicing the 12 habits of unity.
Well, first of all, Elaine, thank you for that color commentary. And and that you're a person who clearly ahead of your time, radically inclusive in your. I didn't realize about how you actually came up with these different shades and actually found consultants. That I'm glad that you included people of color in your thing right away. Very positive. Now let's talk about this April, healing the earth, rebirthing the earth. When I think about Earth Day, I think about what it was that started Earth Day, and it was that famous iconic picture of the Earth from the moon. And so when we all were able to look at this picture and see that we were all sailing along on what Bucky Fuller called Spaceship Earth, we're all part of this, that we're all included in it. There's no escape from this. We have one planet, one globe, one home, our only home, and all of us have to inhabit this at the same time, right? And find a way to be in harmony with it. Well, guess what? Earth Day, the first Earth Day was more than 50 years ago. And here we are more than 50 years later, and things have not gotten better, they've gotten worse. So yes, we set this idea that we want to create Earth Day. We had the book that came out in 1971, I believe, called Limits to Growth, and it laid out how we would have to actually begin to shift our consumption from using things up to restoring things. And yet here we are 50 years later in worse shape than we've ever been. So why do you think that is?
Well, you've certainly made a point that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that it's true. You know, we started Earth Day 50 years ago, and of course, referring to our project, the 12 Habits of Unity, you can't make a habit in a day. So that if basically over the last 50 years, we've devoted one day out of 365 in a year to being conscious and really thinking about taking care of our environment and making the earth better, well then, you know, the odds are pretty good that we haven't accomplished much with that thought. So at least in the context of the 12 habits, we're taking the idea of our environment and the fragility of our climate and being stewards of the earth and giving us an entire month to focus on that habit. I think there are a lot of reasons that seem to be out of our control. And I'm going to use the word seem to be because we still have the potential to come together coherently with our cosmic thinking, coherently month by month, and affect people way beyond us who do not understand things the way we do. But that being something that hasn't happened yet because our peer participant level hasn't gotten big enough to just make it really start to grow. Unfortunately, economic factors have been in favor of practices, manufacturing and energy practices that were contrary to, that are contrary to reducing carbon emissions all over the world. And so we've had whatever consciousness that's been built about understanding the fragility of our planet and what's going to happen. And I'm going to say now going to happen because it's already happened. The effects are already being known. Storms are bigger and fires, and I worry about both of my children. One lives in Texas where there's been flooding during hurricanes. Another one lives in the West, and while his home hasn't been burned up by fires. So the downgrading of the climate, you know, is touching my life personally, and it's the economic advantages to continuing with the fossil fuels that we don't feel like we can do anything about. But I know that as the effect of the habits of unity grows and it starts to touch people that don't know it cognitively, but are getting it from our resonating, we'll be able to influence some of these factors and things will change. And hopefully we'll be able to save our planet in time.
It's really true that, you know, people are doing things like, well, if I recycle, all of these little smaller things that people are doing, and yet we haven't really acknowledged the context that all of this is taking place in, including the economic system that you talked about. And that is in a system that silently, often invisibly, promotes the illusion of separation. So it's understandable that people would be separated from the natural world. It's understandable that in this civilization, we don't have a context for being in connection with nature. And in fact, one of the things that's changed since you first started doing this 30 years ago is that people are more living in the unnatural world, in virtual reality, on their smart devices, watching the big screen and the small screen. And so part of this is recognizing that we need to be in nature more, that it may not be, ask not what you can do for nature, but what nature can do for you. That one of the reasons why, if you love something, then you're going to want to take care of it. And so because of the habits of disconnecting from nature, and that's been exacerbated during the COVID lockdown times, where people have stayed at home, have not socialized, they haven't hugged other people. Many people, having worked from home, decide, well, I'd rather work from home now. Well, what that does is it keeps us away from the natural physical connections with other people. I watched a very interesting interview between Charles Eisenstein and Zach Bush, people that have been great influencers for me. And the conversation was about how in shifting so much of our lives to this digital world that we have forgotten about the analog aspect of the world, nature, for example. And children need that nature. Children need to have their masks off and be able to look at each other in the face. They need to hug. They need to be held. They need to be cuddled. Adults need to be held, need to be cuddled. I actually have an acquaintance who 6 months into the pandemic literally died of a broken heart because he was unable to go socialize and dance with his community, and all the things that made so much of a difference to him, that connected him to the web of life, were gone. And so we have settled for this secondhand experience of reality. And so maybe the greatest practice we can have related to nature is to put ourselves in it, to allow ourselves to be nourished by it, to be in the sunshine, to be walking outside, to look at flowers. My good friend Phil Moore, who was director of Upland Hills School in Michigan for 50 years, he's the author of The Future of Children. His school it was out in the country, even though it's just 30 or 40 miles from Detroit. His school, the children were encouraged to have what he called sky time, where children are out under the sky. That's the only roof they have, is under the sky, playing outside, interacting with the elements, feeling the wind, feeling the snow, feeling the heat, feeling the breeze, interacting with it, looking at frogs, looking at growing things, and so on. And we have, since our childhood, people have become more and more and more out of touch with that. So in practicing this habit of rebirthing the earth, how are some ways that you've found to actually be nourished by nature, so that letting nature love you, you can love nature more?
Well, before I answer that specific question, I just wanted to add to the thinking that you brought up from listening to the lecture you listened to last night, in that I think that the disassociation from nature started even before the digitization of kids and even before COVID. Really, it began to come about through urbanization. I happen to live in a beautiful rural area. I mean, I can walk out my door and in a second, I'm seeing nature everywhere. But I sometimes feel bad because, I have grandchildren that live in a huge city like Houston, and I call it 25 square miles of cement. So that I think the urbanization, where families are living in apartments, tightly, that are cement, and cement is out their doors, and maybe there's a few little sprigs of trees up and down the streets. But I do think probably the first step toward separating us from nature occurred when urbanization happened. I think the things that, so for people living in urban settings, they have to make a much greater effort. I have a lifelong friend, actually my college roommate, who lives in an apartment building in New York City, and it was there all through the pandemic, and so their apartment faced east, And they explained that to get their nature nourishment, they opened a window on the east side of their building and put their feet up on the windowsill of the window in their apartment, just to get some sun, just to get some connection with nature. So whether or not you live in an urban setting, if you're blessed enough to live in a rural setting where you can walk up and down the streets, where you can take your shoes off and put your feet on the dirt. I mean, feel the dirt. It's just totally great. You feel like as an adult, when you grow up, you stop having a need to be in the dirt, but that's not true. The dirt is the substance of Mother Earth that grows us all. And so, put your feet in the dirt, your bare feet. I'm lucky enough to have a puppy, and a lot of people, there are other puppies in other dogs in my neighborhood, and the people let them out the back door, and they see me walking in the neighborhood with my puppy every day, and they're saying, why don't you just open the door and let the dog go out and do their business? And I say, I'm not ever going to do that. I said, I want to go out into my neighborhood 2 or 3 times a day and enjoy the nature that's out there, because that's what's important. You can become part of a cleanup project. I mean, almost every community has cleanup projects. Or you can just be a personal cleanup project. Keep a plastic bag in your pocket. And if you see some litter, take the plastic bag out and turn it inside out. I'm pretty good at that, having a puppy. and pick up whatever it is and take it to the nearest garbage can. You don't need to wait for Community Cleanup Day or Earth Day or whatever to do something like that. Needless to say, recycling. I will admit, I am a user of gently used clothing. I try to not be the person that initiates new goods and materials being used to provide what it is that I consume wherever I can. And everyone can make their own list. You can go on the internet and you can find lots of other ways. I try to conserve on water. I don't have a well, but I do have a septic tank, or I do have a septic. And so I try to just a little thing like turn the water on, wet your toothbrush, then turn the water off. And then when you're ready to rinse your mouth and take a drink, turn the water back on. There's just so many. I've set the heat on my water heater to be lower. I mean, I don't need it to be 125 degrees all the time when I'm not using it. There are just so many ways that you can help take care of the environment personally in your own life. I think right now, one of the things that if we are willing to take the time to do, we can advocate, write to our local governments, find out what environmental projects are going on in our state and support them. There are just so many things that you can do. And of all the months of the year, the focus of this month, our environment, is in global crisis. So I'm hoping that our peer participants will really decide to up the ante. I suspect almost anyone listening to us now is probably doing something. But, let's up the ante. Let's make this worth our very lives, because it is.
Something that you said, Elaine, sparked a memory for me. And I spent my deformative years in New York City, living in this concrete. I think wildlife in my neighborhood was pigeons, squirrels, rats, roaches, and flies. That was our wildlife. And when I was in my early 20s, I moved out to a farm in Pennsylvania where I learned to milk cows and take care of goats and chickens. And it was so broadening for my perspective. And it was the first time I ever felt physically at home in a place, connected to a place. And when I was a kid growing up in a mixed race neighborhood, it was still back in the day when a lot of my friends had family in the South, and they would go live on their grandparents' farm for the summer, right? Well, that was in the 50s and 60s. That doesn't happen anymore. So kids are more disconnected from nature than they've ever been. And so in a broader sense, something else that you brought up that's also very important, using gently used clothes, not initiating buying brand new things. And part of the hypnosis that we've been under in this civilization is we've been consumed with consumerism. And what would happen if we actually began to have a different sense of abundance, and not having it be so much an abundance of shiny, flashy things that have to be mined from the earth, but an abundance of the things that we get from the earth, that we get from nature. There was that old cliche, the best things in life are free. At least they used to be anyway. And so the point is that shifting our idea of abundance to the abundance that we get from being in connection with other people, the abundance that we get being in connection with nature, all of the things that don't cost to produce, but who multiply happiness. There's something called the World Happiness Ratio, and there are a lot of countries that are more quote unquote happier than we are, who have a lot less. Why? Because what they have is this web of community. So yes, do all of the things that they tell you to do to reduce your footprint. I've reduced my footprint. I'm wearing smaller shoes. Okay, I'm already doing that. But the point is this. The point is that recognize that our entire civilization has perpetuated this illusion of separation. A couple of years ago, I heard about something called the doctrine of discovery, which perhaps you've heard about. These were the papal bulls that were issued in the 1400s and 1500s, telling the conquerors of the New World that those people over there are not really people. You can do what you will with them, enslave them, kill them, whatever you want to do. They're not people, and that the world is for our use and consumption. This goes back, not just, it's both the, unfortunately, the patriarchal religious view and the patriarchal scientific view that that nature is for man to exploit and extract from. So this doctrine of discovery was what gave permission to destroy and enslave the native peoples of the New World. In fact, can you imagine what possessed the white people to kill hundreds of thousands of buffalo, that which the native people relied on as part of their being in rhythm with the web of life and livelihood? What kind of a civilization would allow something like that to happen and consider it normal? So I think we have to look at our inheritance, both from the patriarchal religious standpoint and from the scientific materialist standpoint. Because if we go back to Descartes, he was the one who said, the whole universe is a machine. And so when you hear a pig squealing who's being slaughtered, it's no more than the sound of a squeaky wheel that needs oiling. That's how brought into this mechanistic view of the world. And we don't realize that is the dominant view. And so here we are trying to save the earth when the earth will save itself. We need to save humanity in the context of the earth.
That's a really important point you're making about the whole definition of abundance being related to materialism and consumerism. And that's very Western. The anecdotes that you just spoke of out of history, abundance, getting all the buffalo robes when the natives were depending on the buffaloes for their food. So I was blessed many years ago. I mean, so long ago that I suppose I could find it, but I don't do it so much, but I used to enjoy reading Psychology magazine. I actually started college as a psychology major, but there was a fabulous article on the difference between the Eastern and Western, the basic point of view of the Eastern and Western culture. And as I read on, there was a lot of explanation, but toward the end of the article, it said that anyone can do an experiment themselves that will give you the essence of what the difference between the Eastern and Western culture is. Just ask a young child in Western society in America, give them an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and a pencil and ask them to draw a picture of themselves. And invariably, they will draw a big stick figure, pretty much filling the whole space of themselves. Now, go to a Western culture or an Eastern culture, Japan or China, and ask a child in that culture to draw a picture of themselves. And invariably, they'll make a little figure of themselves, probably down in some corner. And then in that picture, they'll put a sun or maybe a tree or maybe a little bit of a mountain range, meaning that from a very young age, the Eastern culture children are taught that their life is contextual, that they are, and their ancestors are brought into it too. They revere the elders, the ancestors. So they're taught from the earliest age that they are not the center of the universe, that they are a contextual part of the whole. And I do think that as the Western culture is just missing this entirely. And unfortunately, it's the Western culture that's predominating and dominating the attitudes and atmosphere of the world and behind the problems that are happening. So when you go to bed tonight or wake up tomorrow morning and you're doing your daily reflection on taking care of an environment, picture yourself contextually as a part of the greater whole. And I'm sure you'll have a much easier time maintaining your own role and adding to your own part that you can play in maintaining the stewardship of this planet.
Wow, I really love the distinctions between how the East and the West view themselves. And again, this is a contextualized thing, not to over-idealize indigenous people, but the indigenous people of Turtle Island here where we are, they look 7 generations back and 7 generations forward in terms of making their choices. They're honoring their ancestors that go all the way back, and they're thinking about the world of the future. And even in how the, I'm sad to say, environmental movement has become largely astroturf. It's become about virtue signaling. It's become about, we're better than those other people because we believe there's a climate issue. But when you look at what's actually being done and all of these COP25s and COP in and COP outs, really, what they're doing is they're shuffling around different forms of wealth without really healing the planet. Nobody out there in COP whatever who is flying out there in their private jets, spending gazillions of dollars in jet fuel to get there, none of those people are talking about how do we restore the soil? How do we restore the microbiome in the soil? How do we actually create not just a sustainable, because that word's been hijacked, but a restorative, regenerative way of being with the planet. I mean, all of these people who are promoting this, great environmental stuff, they're not talking about Monsanto or GMOs. They're not talking about real food instead of Frankenfood. They're talking about how to actually create the illusion that something is being done when actually just the chips are being shuffled around. So I think it's up to the rest of us in cultivating a consciousness that's going to change us. Because as you know, the reason why we're doing the 12 habits is because of consciousness. So it's not even about I'm recycling, I'm doing this, I'm using less water. All these things are really very good, but it has to be in the context of not just loving nature, but experiencing the love nature has for us. That's really, if we spent the month of April every day feeling, even if you got to put your feet out by the window that's open, the east window, like your friend in New York, whatever we have to do every day, something to allow ourselves to be nourished by nature, because that puts us in a different position than, oh, we have to take care of nature. Very, very important. So the more we allow nature to love us, the more we accept those gifts, the easier it will be for us to create practices that naturally allow us to use less, that naturally support regenerative agriculture, local food, keep eating local food, buying local food, supporting local food, and then also gathering with people in reality and physical reality so that we can experience the physical touch, physical comfort, and connection with other people that unfortunately we've used artificial intelligence to replace real intelligence.
Very much so, Steve. It's definitely, I mean, every month I'll probably tell you I think that month is the most important habit. But in April, this is really true. Our Earth is in such a crisis. You talked, I mean, the perspective of the indigenous population here in the United States was certainly much more similar to the Eastern perspective than the Western perspective. And there's a wonderful statement that's attributed to Chief Seattle. I've heard that question, but I'm not sure. But the statement is, we have not inherited the earth from our ancestors. We are borrowing it from our children. I mean, we are borrowing this planet from our children. No wonder these young people like Greta Thunberg and are as up in arms as young kids under the age of majority can be. Anyway, we are borrowing this earth from our children. And if you can't get excited about the earth, then get excited about your children and your grandchildren. Remember what failing to get our act together as a human body of people living on this planet can do if we focus on saving this planet for our children. As I've said many times before, one of my goals with the 12 habits is to put an E on the end of the word human so that we no longer are humans, we become humanes. That humanity becomes humanity. And that will happen because everyone on earth, or many more than now, will be waking up in the morning and thinking of themselves contextually, both as part of a body of people on the earth, as part of the earth, as part of the past, and part of the future in the presence of our children. There's so many ways that we can practice taking care of your environment. Steve, do you have a few ideas to close with?
I want to once again emphasize what I think is the most important thing we can get from this, and why April may be the most important month, that this practice needs to vibrate throughout the whole year. And that is to turn the tables on this entire idea of we are here to take care of the environment, and shift that to we are here to experience the natural love and abundance of nature. We are here to allow nature to take care of us in a truly restorative way, so that we get to experience all of these benefits. We get to experience the abundance without things. I mean, how many people, everybody's watching this on either the big screen or the small screen. Do you get sky time every day? Do you get time to be outside? Time to experience a sunset, a sunrise, the wind, the rain, all of these things that are the natural world, and be nourished by it? The more we allow ourselves to be cared for by nature, the more we will be able to care for nature in an appropriate way. This is not part of the Save the Earth campaign. It's part of the Save the Humans campaign. The Earth will save itself. So, intentional practice, invitational intentional practice for April. Bring nature and love of nature into your daily life. And by daily life, I mean every day. You have a garden view. What do you see out your window? Is there a bird feeder? Can you spend time in the sun? Is there a squirrel that you can feed down the street? Are you familiar with earthing? Putting your feet on the earth, which is not the same as sunning and certainly not the same as mooning. We won't talk about that. But planting your feet on the earth and feeling how it feels to actually be grounded on the physical planet. And most of all, most important of all, feel that love of nature and let that inspire you to bring that love out to the world and let it radiate in every direction so that the planet gets healed on all levels.
Steve, you've mentioned so many lovely ways that our peer participants can become involved in taking care of our environment, which we've kind of all agreed is probably the most important one right now, given the crisis that our world is in. That everyone do more rather than less to make something happen that will improve our own lives and hopefully resonate outward up to the powers that be that are failing to take the steps we need to curtail the degradation of the environment. And I'm inviting our peer participants who have been listening to us today to really, really give deep thought to upping the ante on their love of the earth, their cherishing of the earth, and looking at what they can do to both connect themselves better or to feel more contextual about themselves as part of the earth. So, Steve, you've shared a list of wonderful ideas that people can take to both become more integrated, feeling more part of the earth and nature themselves, to reach out and be more active in coherently valuing and being a steward of the physical things that come in our space, buy less, buy local, and so and so. But we haven't on this episode told people that there are a lot of really wonderful ideas on our website at 12habitsforallofus.org. The book, The Habits for Unity, actually has a half a page reading each day. And on each of those days during the month of April, there's actually a specific idea. So that if you're short of your own ideas, if you have the book, there's an idea of something you can do on that day to take care of your environment. Water your plants, plant a tree, go down to the local park and feed the squirrels. Just all those ideas are in the book. So I just want to let our audience know that we're hoping that they're gradually becoming involved as peer participants in the 12 Habits of Unity, that they're interested in helping spread the resonance of the focused, coherent messages that are actionable and can be put into practice by people who don't even know or understand what we do. And to remember for this month, again, the words of Chief Seattle, who said, "We have not inherited the earth from our ancestors, we're borrowing it from our children." So let's do more to act like it.
Okay. And what's up, Doc? Okay. I'm sorry.